Joshua Hopping here. I want to tell you a story about an encounter I had with the Holy Spirit that changed my life. In 2006, my wife and I had joined a church planting team out of the Vineyard Boise up to Sweet, about an hour north of here. Now, we originally were going up there for 6 months just to help with the children's ministry and get things started. We lived in Boise. We had great jobs in Boise. We had no desire to leave Boise. Well, a couple months into the church plant, the church up there in the community asked us to move up there to participate in the community life and to really help, be a part of that church. Now, of course, you imagine it's a big decision. My wife would have to quit her job, we had to sell her house, and all those different questions going around our heads. So in an effort to hear God's voice, I went to a men's prayer and healing meeting hosted by Kevin Thenis. And I just wanted to hear God. Didn't need any healing, I just wanted to hear God. And I was hoping I could siphon something off. And as I was there, I heard God telling me to leave and get on my motorcycle and drive up there to Sweet and do some praying. Now I started wrestling with God because I had paid $10 to be able to go to this breakfast, and I want to get my money's worth. Which is, the humor is that's not lost on me here. I was going to hear for God, and then whenever God speaks, I get mad at him and decide to argue with him. But withstanding, I ended up getting on my motorcycle, drove it to Sweet, and found a garage sale. And which was an odd thing, actually, in Sweet, to be in a rural community, and not a lot of garage sales there. Pull up, and it was a couple from the church that was having a garage sale. And while we were there, another couple showed up who were not part of the church. They weren't Christians. And because we're talking about the church, we invited them to come. And eventually, as it turns out, they become Christians. And that's a whole phenomenal story with their discipleship. But at the time, all I knew was, here is a garage sale, and I had met somebody at church, and they were encouraging me to come on up. So I got on my bike, kept driving, and found another garage sale. And this one was a lady who was moving her mom out of the community. She had attended a Celebrate Recovery at the Vineyard Boise and just was heartbroken over just some of the things happening in her life. So I had an opportunity to stop and pray with her and just encourage her to keep following Jesus. Then I got on the motorcycle and I kept driving further up into the mountains. And I stopped in a community called Ola. And I just started crying, just weeping and crying, took off my helmet and just standing there crying. And God's like, Josh, you could go all across the world to preach the gospel and tell people about you in a village of 200-300 people all across places. And it's true. And I've been to the Philippines, I've been to South America, and I've been to these villages of 200-300 people overseas. And God's like, you've done that, but who's going to go to these people? Who's going to go to rural Idaho? Who's going to go to these small communities where there isn't a church, or if there's a church, it's not really vibrant? Who's going to tell them about Jesus? And this broke me, and I just started weeping and crying and say, okay, God, here I am. Here I am. If you want to send me up here, I'm ready to go. As I looked up into the sky, I remember kind of seeing this goose. And I can't tell you if it's a real goose or if it was just a vision of a goose. But the significance to me was, at that time, I had read a book called The Red Moon Rising. And in there, talked about the wild goose chase. How the ancient believers in Scotland and Ireland and England used to have the goose that represented the Holy Spirit. Because when the Holy Spirit comes, it comes in power. Just like a goose. A goose tries to attack you, there's power coming at you. It's a wild goose. It's not a tame Holy Spirit. It's not this gentle dove. It's a powerful goose. And if you think about that, you talk about the concept of the wild goose chase, which is something that's foolish to man, something that doesn't make sense. Well, if the goose is the Holy Spirit, then things that do not make sense to man actually makes perfect sense to Christ. So we follow the Holy Spirit into the unknown. And as I saw that goose and I sat there on that mountaintop, I said, okay, God, let's go. So we ended up selling our house and we moved up there, and that kind of was the beginning of a 9-year journey where eventually I became the senior pastor of the church, and then we handed leadership over to another couple, and we're back at the Vineyard Boise. But it just radically changed how I see the world and everything else, all because of an encounter with Jesus, an encounter with the Holy Spirit, who said, Josh, follow me. Follow the wild goose, even though it does not make sense to you, and see what happens. So I think there's my story.